Welcome to The Human Edge. This week's guest is Leo Elstob. Leo is a true creative. He's a graphic designer, he's a DJ, a radio presenter, and he's also remixed for the likes of Lou Reed and Florence and the Machine. This conversation was really all about creativity. Where does creativity come from? How do you create the conditions for creativity? So if you're a creative person, or even if you're not, it was an amazing conversation. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And if you do, please share, please like, please subscribe, all of that stuff. It'd be massively helpful. Thank you.
One of the best DJs I've ever witnessed is Danny Tenaglia.
Yeah.
And pretty much the whole of the music industry, house music world in London would decamp to watch him at his altar of magnificence at a place called Groove Jet in Miami.
Yeah.
It's a Miami Music Conference every March. And this wasn't at Miami, but I saw him in London play, and it was one of these situations where the room is at the absolute peak of the energy that you could have, and he just took it down like 4 notches and went, I'm going to play some jazz funk, you know. Yeah. And the whole room was just as completely, intensely with him, but the mood and that's virtuoso kind of DJing. Yeah. I had it at We Out Here. There's a fantastic London DJ called Johnny Reckless, and he was playing for us at We Out Here, and he's got a really hardcore dancers crowd that when you saw them we were with our stage on the Saturday night, I was really chuffed because I knew I had the hardcore dancers sort of with us, and they were really there for the BBE Records crew, and Johnny was part of that gang. If you go and see him in London, he's got a very hardcore kind of soul following. Really, people who are kind of long-term soul and disco fans really know their music. He took things down, and the deeper he went, and the more abstract and more sort of rootsy and deep the music got, everybody went with him. And the atmosphere was palpable, like, wow, this is amazing, it's really intense. But it was almost like the opposite of Fatboy Slim, who would go, and it'd be just like this complete sort of euphoria crescendo. This was the flip side of that. It was as intense as that. And you get that through years of DJing and having the kahunas to go, I'm going to throw a curveball in, and that's the mark of a good DJ is that they can be quite impish like that. They can be quite, I'm going to mess with everybody now and throw this weird thing in or do whatever. And a lot of the good DJs that I really respect, they've all got that quality, So it's an art form. It's not mechanical. It's reading the room. It's shamanic, no question.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, I've been on lots of self-inquiry and lots of sort of retreats, learning about shamanism, learning about psychedelics, and doing all that kind of work and spiritual work and self-inquiry. And one of the first things I kind of asked of the universe, or asked when I was interacting with shaman and facilitators in that sphere, I'd say DJ is a shaman, right? Because they have this magical power, the good ones do. And they all say absolutely, And I think it's there's a collective energy in any space, and the good ones tap into that. It's a very humble. Most of the time, people don't even want. They're not interested in you. I've had a lifetime of playing in bars where they're kind of like, "Can you turn it down a bit?" And you're very humble. It's like being a waiter or whatever. You're at the service of the people in the space, enjoying whatever they're enjoying. And then there are levels at which you're important. You get to the stage where everyone's at the stage with their phones out, looking at you, which I don't. Not into that kind of DJing. But if you're in the space where people are interested in what you're doing, and you are the role you have is to help people forget their horrible days, week's work, and release, then that's absolutely a shamanic practice that's going on. Andrew Weatherall was one of the people that I grew up on his dance floor, essentially, and he had it to the level, he's mercurial about it. He's like this Merlin-like wizard when it comes to music. And as pretentious as it sounds, I'll stand by that all day long. And people who've met him, understand his music, seen, dance to his DJ sets, they'll all say the same thing. There's only a very small percentile of people that have that, to whether it's level or whoever. But the ones that do, it's just pure magic, And the thing is, if you're going to an average nightclub or an average gig or whatever, you might not get that sweet spot where you see that. But I think the people that do witness it, it stays with them.
Yeah.
And you remember when you've heard an incredible DJ.
And whether you're a shaman or a shamanic...
I'm not calling myself a shaman.
A shamanic DJ.
I don't even know how to pronounce it. I don't know if it's a shaman or a shaman.
I've heard both. But for me, I do think creativity, true creativity is a spiritual thing. It comes from somewhere either inside us or outside us. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because you've been creating all your life, and it's super interesting for me because before doing what I'm doing now, I was a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 20 years, and the way I think I was conditioned, or I conditioned myself, the story I told myself was, I'm not creative. And the more I do what I do now, the more I understand actually I am creative. It's just a matter of accessing the creative part of me, which I think, for me, is kind of a spiritual exercise. Can you speak to that?
Well, I don't think parents necessarily say, go and be spiritual and creative to their kids. So there's a lot of social conditioning going on there.
Yeah.
Be a lawyer, be a doctor, which is all coming from a place of love and concern, and knowing the hardship that goes with the creative drive and the creative life. It's not something that I think, if you have it in any quantity where you kind of struggle, as I have done, with day jobs. My first day job was when I was 50.
50?
Yeah, so I was working freelance for the brewery. I was creative director for the last few years at Two Tribes Brewery. Previous to that, I was freelance all the way through. So I've got that creative spirit where I know that if I'm not honouring it, life becomes quite a struggle. I have to scratch that itch, and I have made a sort of earning path through that, so that I've always been able to be creative. It means you have to work very hard, and money comes in fits and spurts, and you have to navigate all of those things. It's not steady Eddie. Only means living on your wits creatively. But as to where it comes from, you get, if you are sort of committed to keeping your hand in creatively and maybe doing creative work that isn't necessarily dovetailed with there's a paycheck at the end of it or a guaranteed amount there. Lots of speculative work, write an album, do whatever. And you find very quickly that regularity is very useful, and getting a practice and getting rituals in place where you've got a place where you do creative work. You have a time when you do creative work. You know when you're most creative. So I'm up at the crack of dawn. I'm most creative in the morning. I have a place a studio at the bottom of my garden, and I go there and it's my creative space. And I remember struggling with lots of these things over the years, and reading a book by Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art, which deconstructed that no one was going to come and save you, and you had to put a lot of serious commitment and effort in to allow the sort of, at least you could rely on, if you turned up and you just got on with it. He was a big champion of just start writing. He was sort of coming from a writer's perspective, and it's like, if you just write every day, the muse will show up. The cogs will start whirring, and you'll do some good work. It might not happen every day, but if you're just habitually doing it, and I think all the people that do it have all these practices in place. I can clearly remember Stevie Wonder and Noel Gallagher saying, if I don't show up and I'm not in my space ready, someone else is getting that song. And they were very vocal about some kind of otherness coming through. I'm not a blank page person, I'm a collage artist, so I'm usually working on a remix of someone else's work. I've got someone's gone, hey, do me a logo, or hey, do me some design work, and there are a lot of there's ephemera of me tweaking and manipulating things that are there. So I don't have a lot of experience of, here's this empty page and I'm waiting for the muse and I'm writing a song from scratch or whatever.
Yeah.
However, I still have that thing where I've learnt the technicality of doing a remix, for example, so I can actually do a remix where I'm jamming and I'm kind of like obsessed with this song and I'm in it, and there can be an element of 3 hours later, 4 hours later, you come up for air and you go, right, wow, I didn't really think about that, like you don't think about driving a car. Something's going on there. It's not your cognitive left brain. Right brain and left brain are working in concert, and you're getting a slightly transcendent state, definitely with making a lot of music. If you're drumming, if you're jamming on, what I have is I have a machine called an MPC, and I will throw samples into that, and it's the closest thing I've got to an instrument, that I know how to play. And I can chop up any song, put it in that, and bash away at it, and record what I'm doing. And I'm not thinking, I'm having fun. I'm going, I wonder what that's like, and it's all happening on the fly. You might get 20 minutes of that, and then what you can do afterwards is go, oh, that bit was good, and make that into 5 minutes, and there's your song. So that's the other side of creativity, that then you get into the chaos side of it, and you're like, okay, so there's some other thing that's going on. So you can't be completely mechanical and go, right, here's my blank page, please turn up and write me a song. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You've got to be in the mood, you've got to be vibing, you've got to be enthused. What usually happens with me is the best time to do a remix is when I'm really excited about a song. And often what happens with good ones, and it happened last week, is I heard my friend's album, and I heard a song off the album, and I go, oh my God, I can hear this could be turned into something slightly different. I phoned him up and said, can I have the bits for that? I'll do it just because I love the song. And I did it in 3 days, hence getting the bits. And then I played it on the radio, and it was incredibly pure. I love this mate of mine's band. I love the song. He was agreeable and gave me the bits. Still in the flush of being besotted with the song, I did it, saw what I could do to make it different. And then it was topped and tailed and out and given to him, and then I played it on the radio. And that is really pure. And then you're in your happy place where you're doing the work you should be doing with the music that you love, and you're not forcing anything. And I'm very blessed to be in that position where I've got the technical skill to turn that around and not have to think too hard, and also the confidence, which has been a long time coming, to go, I'm going to play it on the radio, it's okay. Even though it's very new, and I'm honouring the purity of all that process, because I know it felt right.
And it sounds. I'm curious about that confidence piece, because it sounds like it's taken you a long time to kind of have the confidence to put stuff out there without worrying so much about what other people are going to think about it.
There's a lot of stuff that I will put on the shelf, and it resonated when Andrew Weatherall said this, and he said, if you're not sure about something, just put it on the shelf for 6 months and come back to it. And thankfully I've taken note of that, and some things that I was maybe being a bit experimental with, or just uneasy about it. I'm not a trained musician. Things can be out of tune, things can be wonky. I quite like that. I'm quite happy not I don't have a sort of imposter syndrome around that. I like being DIY and messy, and I don't mind the fact that I'm not trained classically, musically. However, I will be, certain things I'll finish and I'll not be confident about. And if you leave them on the shelf 6 months, a lot of the time, thankfully, you go, that's great, I'm fine with that. Confidence has always been an issue. I think it gets to the stage, I'm 52, I've got nothing to prove, nothing to lose. And then it's very freeing. And you're like, what's the worst can happen? Someone goes, that's crap. What's really nice is to be on that side of the fence and then work with lots of other young musicians. Really, that is their main barrier. And they're at that stage in life where they're getting all those, get a job, what are you doing, what's this music nonsense you're doing? You know, I work with a lot of young singer-songwriters, and I'm producing them. I'm their mentor from come on, when you wrote this song, you thought it was the business. You know, we know that's how it works. When you do something creative, you're in love with it. You know, it's not an arrogant thing. It's just you're so infused and you do this thing. And these poor people will have that first flush of, I've written this song, I've done this bit of music, and I will know it's brilliant. But they will have just fallen off a cliff after writing it for whatever reason, because they've got confidence issues or they've got lots of other things playing on their mind, and they'll be like, oh my God, is this... And that song might languish for ages. And I'll be the person that comes along and goes, it's okay, you can do this. You know, this is a brilliant song. You've got to, you know, we can help make this, I think it should be like this, and you go on a journey with them. But the main the main flowering or blossoming that needs to happen with them as artists is a confidence thing.
But I imagine so it's a very personal thing, creativity. I see this with my wife, who's an author, and putting something that's a part of you out into the world it puts you in
painful.
It can be an incredibly vulnerable place to be, especially when you're criticised, because everyone loves to criticise, right?
But we criticise ourselves, so
we're our own worst
hypercritic, you know, and that I think is a narrative that it came up with the Stephen Pressfield book, and Stephen Pressfield's take on it would be, do you want that to win? You know, there's sort of George and the Dragon analogy that you just have to battle your own demons of insecurity about whatever it is. I'm not, haven't sort of slayed that dragon. That dragon's still very up close and personal. I've got 4 albums to finish, you know.
But do you know any artist, any writer, any that doesn't have that dragon anymore?
I think it's necessary, but otherwise it's not worth it.
So you're saying you have to have the dragon, otherwise...
I think it's a great feeling of achievement to have it really going to the wall with a creative project. Otherwise, you've just dashed it off, and it's maybe not meant a lot.
So you have to, like anything in life, I think you have to go through the struggle in order to create something beautiful. Yeah,
and you get something transformative, and you kind of know that there is this levels of sort of, you know, if it's come from a really pure place, even if it's tough, or with, you know, for example, with artists that I work with, I can hear their demos and I can go, it takes quite a long time to flesh out, like, what, I can see this album finished, and they're there and they've got scraps of songs, and, you know, you've got to go, and I just had to contact someone to get string arrangements on a track on an album, and it was, you know, you just have to kind of climb that mountain to go, well, what's going to make this the best it can be? It's going to take lots of moving parts, but you've got to try and get there. And until you get there, it's not done. And it's even not done, even if you think it's finished and you haven't put it out into the world. That's a cop out. So people talk a lot about it's got to be shipped. You know, it's got to be shipped. And having the day job recently, and now I'm, you know, back in new projects and doing a record label, and the day job was a great, intense period of putting out lots of products and having a team and having lots of discipline and lots of deadlines. And that taught me a lot. And I, you know, I'm still in the glow of that, properly knuckling down, you know, big companies scaling and lots of products being launched and what have you. And I sort of go, right, I've now got that in my toolkit to really get back to work on the albums. These albums have been kind of languishing, and I've now got the chops to push it forward.
The discipline, is that what you're saying now?
I think the discipline and the knowledge that no one's coming to save you. You've got to do it yourself. Whereas I've got younger musicians who I work with. They're still in the someone's going to save me. Someone's going to see, and they might not have had any failures. I've had howling failures. We released albums and no one's listened to it. And that's really, really. There's a perfection in all of this because whenever, and I've done a lot of, psychedelic retreats, personal inquiry. I've been depressed, 20 years ago. I've kind of worked all that stuff out, and I continue to do it. And I go there, I do the deep work. And all the way along, I think one of the truisms that's come out is it's all perfect and it's all got its right moment. So all your failures aren't failures; they're learnings that put you on track for whatever's ahead. And when you get a bit more trusting of that, then you frame failures very quickly in different regard. And I'm at a place now where I'm like, whatever's there, I'll accept it, and I'll be sort of steady myself in the eye of the storm and go, well, I've still got this impetus to get to the finishing post and make it all work. I don't need it to be too structured. And I'll take it as it comes. And as long as the beautiful thing with music production all the way through, and I'm 30 years in, I started first tinkering with samplers independently of anyone else. So I learned how to use them in 1993. And there is this sort of metric from 1993 to now, 30 years and a bit, where it's the gift that keeps on giving, where every time you sit down to do it, there's a little bit of a trick or a know-how or a little reward. You go, oh, I've listened to something that I really admire. And then I read about it and find it and go, oh, no, I understand how that's worked. And so always I feel like I'm learning. And if that metric wasn't there, maybe I would have given up and done whatever. It's not a steady incline on success. It's not a steady incline on anything else, but on learning and being rewarded from that learning. And I get more and more into the process of it. So I'm not interested in releasing a record and having a hit. I am, but I'm happy making the record. Making the record
because of the journey, because of the process, because of the kind of the learning along the way.
And this comes back to what you've dedicated yourself to with karate, where music production is so deep and so multifaceted that it's the gift that keeps on giving. I can never. It's not like completed it, music production. It doesn't happen, And you've got your favourites, and you've got doors that open and new avenues that you explore. What's been very interesting for me, having been at it for a long time, was that the zenith, the absolute apex of what the good equipment was, isn't new. It's not follow the new. It always gets better. You get MP3s and it goes shitty, and things deteriorate because of market forces saying, "Oh, we're going to make it all on an iPod, and MP3s are the way forward," and blah blah blah. And everyone goes, "Yeah, we'll go in this direction." And that happened with a lot of parts of music production. Hence why I use an MPC, and I often use a hardware MPC, and I don't use the computer to program my drums, because the chips in 1995 circa drum machines have a different level of precision to people doing things on a laptop. And if you're really deep into this stuff, you go, oh my God, I need tape, and I need that from 1995, I need that thing from 1984, and I need this and this and this. And that is the true peak at when things were, done well. And most people will have experience of that some degree or another, like someone puts on a vinyl record and go, oh my God, why does this sound brilliant? And that's just market forces that have been seduced with newness, and we've been sold newness with don't tell them that it's all, bit crushed and gristly music-wise. The truth will out, and people will find out. Hence, why vinyl's so, has returned. And that's the other beautiful thing about being in an industry for a long time, is you kind of see these long arcs, and you go, oh yeah, this is, use your ears. Is this any better? And we're in this poverty of choice with laptops and plugins and what have you. And most people who have had a serious relationship with music making have really got into giving themselves less choice to get back to basics with making music. Again, using an MPC is like, okay, I've got this box, I've got to do it all inside this box, but this box is sufficiently solid as a piece of equipment that if I learn this inside out, I can make my music front to back. I don't need to be worrying about what the new toys are, the new plug-in, or same goes for the design world and AI and all of it. I'm sort of interested in it, so I keep abreast of all of it, but I'm also aware of what I've learned from music is like, where do you find your place with it, and where can you be really fluid with what you're trying to do creatively? So I'm all over AI as a designer. I've been a graphic designer as my way of earning a living in tandem with music all the way through. So from '93 I graduated with a degree in graphic design and advertising, and then was freelance as a designer in the music industry and doing promotion flyers and club flyers for people all the way through. I'm now very much into AI, Mid-Journey, all the video stuff that's happening, but I'm looking at it with the same sort of awareness of what I really love about music making, which is this is something I've had all the way through. Take the new tech that may be a fad, you're kind of, everyone's bedazzled by the new capabilities. Take that, always get the sellotape out, get the, use something, or the opposite end of the spectrum. There is, so you've got high tech, lo-fi, DIY, sellotape and scissors. If you're collaging, I start with sellotape and scissors, put it in the computer, scan it, and then I'll muck about with the colours and do all that.
When you're mentoring young up-and-coming artists, is that something you're stressing to them?
Absolutely,
because everyone is seduced by the new and shiny thing, which now is AI, right? But you're saying to them, sure, play with that stuff, but also don't forget that you've got this really rich history that's gone before, and there's a lot of value in experimenting and playing with all of that equipment, hardware, software.
Most of the people I have been drawn to have got that inbuilt. So I'm just working with a young guy, he's 19, he's called Bamboo Powders. He's like David Byrne from Talking Heads, kind of in the making. And he is so naturally just doing his thing that the technology is as lo-fi as possible. So he's got a guitar pedal with loops in it, and he sings very simple songs. There's a T-Rex kind of thing going on where, it's not full, it's rhyming couplets and things. And he's free, and he's got his boundaries. And he didn't come to me and go, we can do all this cool production stuff. He did a bit of, okay, I've now got a recording studio, I can pull things up. But he knew, he goes, I don't want to mess with this. And I said, well, great, that's what I don't want to either. And then you're in this safe space where you've got a point of difference, and this person is being themselves, and that's what you want as a record producer. You're not in the way. I'm not trying. I don't do that with being a remixer particularly as well. You'll have remixes where you can tell who's remixed it because they've done their thing with the components. I'm usually quite give space to what's there already, and I'm usually quite respectful of that. And I'll be like, okay, you need this kind of drummer here, and I'm just going to be out of the way, and all I'm doing is making it broader, deeper and wider, and making it more kind of usually for the dance floor, which is the whole thing with that game, is kind of making things tidy and so that they will work in a big boomy environment.
And I wanted to ask you about the remix work, because you have worked on some pretty famous songs, or with artists, Bowie and Lou Reed, Florence and the Machine, Dua Lipa. So how do those, I don't know if you can call them collaborations, but how do they come about in the first place?
They aren't collaborations, and I'm not rarely. I meet some of the artists. They come about via all sorts of machinations. The Lou Reed and David Bowie thing was through a third party in the music industry who identified us as I was working in a team, remix team.
So that was Satellite of Love, right? So
Yeah.
they came to you and said, "Are you interested in remixing this?"
Yeah, and you're kind of like, duh. And we got the parts and...
But hang on a minute. Duh, yes, but was there a part of you that thought, "Oh shit, you know, I have an iconic tune in my hand. I can't mess this up."
There's trepidation with all the big artists and certainly songs that people know, and you've got to find a point of difference with what you're attempting to do with it. And also there is a kind of giddy excitement of, well, what's the worst that can happen? You've got to give it a go.
Yeah.
I've done lots of them that haven't worked out. I think with the same production team we were asked to do Match of the Day theme tune, and we tried to sort of remix that, and that was a disaster. But the Lou Reed and David Bowie thing was incredible because these voices and these people. I remember hearing the David Bowie duet, and it was produced by David Bowie, written by Lou Reed, from his Transformer album, Satellites of Love, iconic thing. And hearing David Bowie untreated, sort of raw in your headphones for the first time is a very odd, Yeah. And then we did our thing with it, and we got a top 10 hit, and it was great. And that is a spike on one's journey of things sort of all aligning and all working. And when they come along, they're fantastic. And I'll never turn down anything that is sort of difficult like that. The Madonna stuff was like that. Friday, Madonna's team phone up and go, "We need a remix," and I had to deliver it by Monday. So
which tune was that?
It's called "Turn Up the Radio." That was an interesting remix because I put her through a vocoder. So the intro of it is her kind of going all robotic and going like a electro kind of thing. Yeah. So I've already, I always like to muck about with things, So I'm like, that's what's being asked of me. I need to do an adjunct to what's happened. So I had lots of fun with that, and that was brilliant because they took the remix and they put it into the live show. So my intro of Madonna becoming all robotic with this vocoder voice got used in the live set, and I had this incredible, thing of being sort of intertwined into Madonna's live show, which is, a big production, and it was just a wonderful thing. And then you get a relationship with some of the people in these teams. One of the best sort of curation jobs out there with these heritage acts or the big important artists was a beautiful period of work where I did, I think, 4 or 5 remixes with Brian Ferry. His son, Isaac, obviously had grown up with all this amazing catalogue of music, and he's a DJ and he's very knowledgeable. And rather than having that catalogue sort of go to somebody at a record company going, "Oh, let's get the new hot remixer to do it," Isaac has, over the years, very carefully curated that whole catalogue and interfaced with all sorts of amazing, people. I was very lucky to get in on that game. So that was Slave to Love and all sorts of interesting Brian Ferry work. But Isaac had sort of facilitated Todd Tej and all sorts of other remixers, really integrating with this heritage artist. I wish there was more of that around. I think people are getting switched onto it now, but I think that's a really necessary role because new music is a bit of a mush, and there's so much of it. 100,000 records released every day onto streaming. People go, "What do you mean, a week?" No, every day.
Wow.
And that's almost given more sort of focus on the stuff that's there, that people know and that can be looked at again. And I think remixing of the old stuff is, you can do it in, new ways that are really worthwhile. You know, it's not just, oh, why have you done that? It's like there's always something you can do with it. What's really important is going through the lesser known things in really well known people's catalogue, and now you can kind of take them and really go, oh, do you know about this? Which I find a lot of things like that. Where I'll remix them and I'll do them unofficially. They'll just be like on my Bandcamp or whatever, and it'll be like an edit, is what they call them. There's a whole subculture of edits which I'm very sort of immersed in, and that's literally you hear something from the 70s and you go, oh, I can play this, I can DJ with this, I can give it to my DJ friends, and all I've got to do is elongate the bits I like, get rid of the bits I don't like, and carefully put some maybe extra drums and things around it. And there's a whole subculture of that, because the record in its original form doesn't stand up in a DJ set in 2024, but with a little bit of respectful kind of, you know, and people who do these things love the original artists, you know, they're doing it all out of love. And all of a sudden you've got something that loads of new people are hearing, you know. So it's recycling. It's, you know, it's very eco-friendly to be doing remix work in the music sphere, you know.
I've never thought about it in those terms. I'm curious, was there a point in time, so you had success remixing Bowie and Lou Reed, Madonna, Dua Lipa. Was there ever a point in time where you were in danger, if I can put it like that, of being seduced by success? Because you said to me before, you're not interested in celebrity and in fame. It's more about the kind of the creativity for you. But was there a moment in time where you thought, actually, maybe I can go a different
There was an exact moment in time.
Okay.
Sat behind an unplugged synthesizer in Dresden, of all places in Germany, on a PA for Chicane on some children's TV show. I was in a dance act called Chicane, and the other guy in Chicane was up for fame. Yeah. And we had a fork in the road where he wanted to do trance records, which were very mainstream, very, you know, fast house music, and I was a deep house snob, so I was into the hardcore Chicago sort of heritage of the whole thing, and it filled me with dread, and I couldn't straddle those two worlds, so I said I'm out. And
can I ask, what was it about the prospect of fame and celebrity that filled you with dread?
Well, it was more a musical differences kind of thing, where you go, well, I don't really like this music, and I've got such a draw to be trying to make the music that I resonated with of my heroes, people like Larry Heard and Marshall Jefferson, and you know, it's like the hardcore kind of early house stuff, which we went on and did. We had a record label with the guy I was running clubs with called Transfusion, and another label, and I did it. But what was very interesting was everyone went, "Are you mental? Why have you know? What have you?
Yeah. Why have you walked away?
Are you nuts? You've walked away from something very successful." And it was twofold. There was a sort of awful person-ometer that sort of started hitting the red as the success happened. All these very smarmy, duplicitous, snake-like people tried to carve up all the money that was being made.
Okay. So I just want to go slowly at this part because it's really interesting to me. So the more successful you became, then that attracted a type of person
people I didn't like.
Yeah.
And you know, there was inverted snobbery at play. Like I wanted to be the underground, you know. But there was an element of, these people, I really don't like these people, you know. And you know, commercial forces attract certain type of people, you know. And
did you feel yourself changing in some way, kind of in inside, if I can put it like that?
Well, I just knew that it wasn't. You know, my partner got a Ferrari, got a yellow Ferrari. Yeah. A few months later, he had number one hit with Bryan Adams, and I had to weather all that. Going, are you sure you've made the right move here? You know, are you commercially minded? And I stand by that move because I immersed myself in the deep house scene, and it was just pure magic. All through the 90s, I was involved with some of the best club events I've ever been at, you know, and I helped put them on. You know, well, it was just magical from start to finish.
And that comes back to what we were saying right at the beginning of the conversation. I think the experiences that you have, or that you
it's just the purity of it. You know, I'm not putting down that route because my ex partner in Chicane is an incredibly talented guy, and he has had a hugely successful career. But for me, with my inverted snobbery about that certain type of music, the direction it was taking, and my need to align with what I was, it wasn't just passionate about it, you were living it, you know. And I ran a nightclub Saturday night and Sunday through this period. So I was weekly promoting a club with 600 people in it. And it was a time when all this music was, it's sort of like the golden age of disco house, filter house, whatever you want to call it. I mean, just think of any 90s sort of house records that crossed over. We were having those people do PAs, we were having live bands on that were all part of the new disco scene that was sort of at its kind of infancy in London. And so much like Acid House, which I had a ringside seat of too, which I think informed this, when you see something pure, you're in it. The magic that you experience is enough of a driver to turn your nose up at other things like that, because it's so incredible.
So these days when you're coming back to your work mentoring younger artists, and for anybody that's listening is thinking about going into the music industry, what advice do you give them in relation to, you know, success, fame, celebrity? Do you have those conversations?
Well, if you think about people's career paths, I think a lot of people have, if you're into the craft, so if you're going to do it because you love doing it, then the success is a sort of tangent to that, you know. And then you've got people that kind of need to get honest with themselves about why they're doing it, whether they're a DJ because they like, you know, standing on a stage and pyrotechnics or whatever, or whether you're, you know, what we would call a real DJ, who when I see them, I know them, and the ones I've spotted,
the shaman
well,
types,
they're just passionate to the point where you just know when you find those people, because they've spent all their money on a record when they should have been, you know, it's just they've gone DJing somewhere abroad and they come back with no wages because they bought some obscure record there, and it, you know, whatever. And it's that level of passion that informs. And usually the people like that are good, you know. Like the people I work with, it's a bit of a prerequisite. You're like, you don't need too much nannying around, be careful about all the dazzle of this and this and this, because they are actually in it for the right reasons. And then all I would really say to them is, just do you know, put the pedal to the floor on being yourself. And if other people come in and interfere with that, really check the energy and check how you feel and go, do I want to be changing what I'm doing with the promise of some... The thing with the industry now is where's the win out of major labels, all the things that were... I got dazzled by it. My first record I was selling out of a Fiat Uno, self-pressed.
Yeah.
And I got into a bidding war with Virgin Records and Deconstruction, Sony BMG. And I was bedazzled, you know. And now it's like, well, what are you going to do for me, ex major label? You know, the landscape's completely changed, and people really should ask those serious questions about, well, what are these people bringing to the table? Anyone who's offering them a deal or some kind of leverage. Really, you can get a manager and be your own label, you know, and go, right, I need a good social media person, I need good artwork, I need to present myself in a certain way. But record labels seem now like they're really clutching at straws as to their worth. I don't know. My advice would be the more pure you can make and just focus on getting the music done, the more pure you can make that process and the more it feels like it's really you, do that first and foremost. Don't worry about all the other stuff. Don't make that stuff to the rule book of, oh, I'm going to Spotify it a bit. I might make it 2 minutes long because that's what's did it. It's like you're on a race to the bottom with all that premeditative, commerciality minded double think
Yeah.
with creative pursuits.
You said to me before a really interesting phrase, we're living in an authenticity economy, which I found really interesting, kind of, because what you were saying there, the advice you give to the musicians that you speak to is just be you, be yourself, be authentic.
Yeah.
Which I think is harder and harder to do today, especially, you only need to look at social media and how people are curating their lives. And if you're not careful, you begin to think, actually, that's their reality, when it's just a beautiful, curated version of their reality.
Yeah.
And so it blurs the lines of what's authentic and what's not. So when you think about the authenticity economy, what do you mean by that?
I think it's more polarised now, because there's so much of that curated fakeness. Nobody in the Instagram dream life is living that life. We worked with a chef who was giving the illusion of, I've just dashed off this incredible hyper creative sandwich thing.
Yeah.
And there's, a team of people behind him, and it's all fake. It's not fake in that he's not a good chef and that he's not honest about his delivery.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of...
Yeah, the process of getting to where he got to eventually, that's...
So, where does... It's nuanced. We're in a nuanced world. But if you're putting your chips on, I'm going to bank on nobody sussing it out, and I'm going to... there's a desperation to joining the mountain of fake. You've lost already. You don't believe in yourself. You're fearful. It's I remember quoting the fear or love. Like everything's binary. Everything's coming internally. Every action is coming from fear or love. And it's a cheesy kind of statement. I think it was in Donnie Darko or something. After I said it, I realised it was mentioned in there. But all the cliches of the world ring true. There's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
So you're coming from fear. If you're going, I need to be like that false world. There's a hole in your belief about your creative worth.
Yes.
Like most people don't have a robust. Takes a long time. I haven't got it. I've kind of just knuckled down and cracked on, even though I haven't got supreme confidence. And I think a lot of people learn just to trudge through. But if you're starting out and you're early on and you are going, I've got to fake it because maybe I'll get there, and maybe in the process I'll get, nobody will notice, and I'll get the fame and glory, whatever you want. Just stop and do the work on what you want, and the honesty and the purity of what you're trying to achieve and what's there. And hopefully there's a new generation, like we had with punk, like we had with acid house. Acid house was not particularly reactionary, but what acid house absolutely did was it created a whole generation of DIY culture in this country. And I think the weird polarity that's going on with the class system and education in the arts and no funding and whatever, if you've got this creative urge and you aren't a rich kid, for want of a better word, you're in a spot, how do you do that? And if you don't want to play the false Instagram game, or I don't want to hate on Instagram specifically, because there's a lot of other things to hate on there, but what a minefield to be dealing with as a young person who's got a creative urge, whether it's to be an artist, be a musician, or maybe just a creative urge that's quite nebulous. You haven't got any time or space, and you've got a load of false gods going, you do it this way, and it's like, it's difficult. So the answer is, I don't have any advice except look internally and be true to yourself and find out the difference between this binary thing. Is it coming from a place of my, when you do self-inquiry and you go on retreats and you meditate and you do all these things I've done, the cognitive process seems to be threefold. So it's head, heart and gut. So there's 3 organs going on there that all have some kind of influence over your decision making. You know, it's not, if you just make a head decision, it's one thing. You know, head and heart's like you go into a business meeting or whatever, you go, my gut says, my head says, okay, you know. So a threefold decision about your own creativity. If all those feel aligned, you're in a good place. If it all feels like you're going, I'm just trying, I want, it's a means to an end, or it's not pure, then you're built to fail. Yeah. You're in it for the wrong reasons, and you've got to love it when no one's looking, and you've got to stand by it, and you can't fake the funk, as they say.
You can't fake the funk. Okay.
You can't. I mean, music, you hear it. Like I know if I'm working on a track, or there's a session when there's a musician in the room, I can feel the magic. There's the music's going on. There's the emotion in the song. There's the delivery of the vocalist. I'll have someone do 5 takes of a song, and I'll know the take that's got the secret sauce, the magic, fairy dust on it.
Yeah,
it's just palpable.
And that's when the artist is most aligned. Yeah.
Pure.
Yeah.
And it, you know, whether it's from source, whatever, with singing, you can have people sing and there is a blockage, a barrier there, and it will be slightly wobbly, and it'll be, you know, you can hear it in the vibrato, you can hear it whatever, and then when someone's like, and you go to them like, you give them a shake and you go, just, you know the intent of this song. Usually people have written the words and it's quite meaningful to them, and you go, just, you know, take 5, whatever, and then you somehow or other they get in the zone and you get the take, and then it's like this, you know, this thing, that's pure magic. You know, when anyone says to me magic doesn't exist, I say, what's a song? You know, songs make you cry. Songs make millions of people lose their mind over them. You know, they become iconic. Now, all it is words and vibrations, you know. And these things, they're like the Mona Lisa, you know. We were talking about recording, saying, you know, someone somewhere pressed record on Rock Around the Clock or whatever, you know, some 50s recording where all this stuff is funneled into a bit of magnetic tape. And that 5 minutes of magnetic tape...
That's the magic.
...becomes, you know, one of David Bowie's, you know, classics or whatever. But at some point, with the old school recording as well, where it was that much more, we've got to hit it, this is the take. Everybody's heightened and everybody's focused on this one thing, and you get this sort of condensation of all this creativity into this little thing. That's the for me, that's the magic of music production, is it then becomes a little gem. You know, it's like this thing that goes out into the world and then it's there forever.
And that's, I'm kind of obsessed by this idea of alignment, because that 5-minute gem, that's when everything aligns. And I just want to speak personally, because I understand how it feels as well. You know, I had a 20-year career as a lawyer, and it was never a bad thing, but I never felt truly aligned. But now doing what I'm doing, I know how that feels. And that's the key. That's when I'm being, you know, this situation, that's when I'm my authentic self, and it's producing a feeling that I've never had before. And that's really interesting. So I really
it's subtle.
Yeah, I really understand what you mean when you talk about alignment.
So my wife's into gardening, and I know that there's a different essence to her, what she gets from gardening than she gets from her day job. And I'm very respectful of people that they need the day job, and people have lives to lead and whatever, and creativity gets second fiddle to those things, and that's for all the right reasons. People have families and commitments and whatever, and I respect that. But there comes a time in life when you do need to really address the idea that stuff doesn't go away. If you've got a creative fire burning inside of you, or you know over the years that there's an alignment issue with certain activities and an alignment positivity when you do certain things, whether that's painting or poetry or whatever, and it usually comes in after middle age, you know, you kind of start going, well, if not now, when, you know. And you get a really...
Can I just stop you? Because I don't want anyone listening to think that the alignment thing can only happen, when you've done a lot of introspection, self-inquiry, and you've reached a certain time in your life where you understand how these things work. It is possible, right, to find alignment early on and to stay aligned, throughout your life.
I think people do a very good job of doing both, and they have their allotments, they have their train set, they have their painting on a Saturday or whatever. It's the world over. People have these huge passionate hobbies. So I'm not saying it's a binary thing, but it is important to address the fact that if it's there in any great capacity and it's unresolved, you need to look at it. I've looked at it I've always looked at it, and I've always been lucky enough to honour it and be creative and always scratch that creative itch. In later life, and 30 years into being a professional creative in all sorts of different capacities, I'm now interested in where's the best use of my time, because it's finite.
Time is a finite resource.
I had a most awful situation where I went for a hearing test, and there was some depreciation in my high frequencies. And all of a sudden, the permanence of you've got all the time in the world to finish these albums or do whatever, all that is upended, and it is incredibly sobering.
And it's funny, isn't it, that it takes something like that for us to understand the finiteness of it, because it can happen to anybody today, tomorrow. And often, people are waiting for something before, or they're too fearful of doing too fearful to start something because they think I'll do it when I'm ready, or I'm doing it when I feel confident, not understanding that may never happen because of the nature of life.
I mean, there's a well-known phrase: "Don't die with your songs inside you." To one degree or other, we've all got to address that, whatever that might be. It might be an allotment that you always wanted, whatever it is. For me, I'm refining where my happy place is, and refining. There's a lot of different activities that one can do, and I'm on a musical level. It's like, okay, I might be going deaf here, I might be having impairment with my hearing. We're in the very early stages. I'm still able to mix and record music, but it's sobering. And it's like, there's no mucking around here. This is serious business. We've got something that there is not guaranteed, and there's an impermanence to it. So I've done that inquiry. I've also been really serious about what gets my time, and I need stuff that's got a purity to it. And what's happened recently is I took on a radio show weekly. I've got a 2-hour radio show. You have to prepare quite a lot of music for that, but it's multi-layered in that I have to get organised with all the music that I have made to play things that have been languishing on hard drives and from 30 years of making stuff, and get organised. And that's been a kind of inquiry thing, going, what should I be doing musically? And it's like, I can work with lots of young people and learn a lot from them, and that feels resonant. And I can reassess what I've been up to for the last 30 years and play it to people, because a lot of it hasn't been heard. And the beauty of doing a radio show these days is it gets archived and you can listen to it as and when, any time. But in doing it, there was this other element which was pushing yourself as well, which is a prerequisite for me. 30 years in, I've still got to learn. I've still got to evolve. So I didn't know how to do a radio show 9 weeks ago. I still have a huge capacity to mess things up, but I love the chaos of it.
So part for you right now, part of being in alignment is learning, doing something new, challenging yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, and embracing the chaos.
Embrace the chaos. Know that I'm probably transitioning from doing exclusively to maybe doing mentoring and teaching, and then maybe moving more into that. And the thing I've always found very straightforward is knowing talent when I see it, and the importance of giving people encouragement and detailed feedback and detailed encouragement, because I know how that, from my own experience, when I was at design school and certain tutors would be really resonant, it lives with you forever.
It does.
And it keeps you going in when you're in the dark places, you know.
Yeah. I just want to pause. Dwayne, how are we doing for time? It feels like we're over time.
We're on 1 hour 5.
Okay.
This recording started about 10
Yeah.
minutes before
Yeah.
we really got into it.
Yeah, okay. I was waiting for the camera to stop beeping. Not today.
This is a different one.
Okay. That camera normally...
Can I grab a bit more water? Is there...
Yeah, I'll do it.
Really loving this conversation.
Nice one.
It's exactly what you're pretty much similar to what I do.
Really?
I'm an engineer,
Yeah.
live sound engineer.
Yeah.
So like the journey that you're speaking about and being freelance.
Yeah.
It's a good conversation.
You need a lot of hats, freelance, and I'm not a natural admin.
Exactly.
I mean, that's another thing to talk about is, you know, with the binary nature of the world and archetypes. So all the way through, I've designed logos and come up with names for companies and help people brand things. And I love it from a music perspective. So when I was 10 years old, there were, you know, artists like Kid Creole and the Coconuts and Adamant and, you know, lots of visually very exciting bands. And things like The Art of Noise as well. And Malcolm McLaren was a big influence on me, where it was a very collage thing when you had Trevor Horn and Malcolm McLaren and various artists working with all this Americana and mixing and matching it and square dance and DJs and B-boys and all of that. And it was a package. And going through all that journey from 10 years old, going, I want to design record sleeves. And then leaving college, I went straight into working with people in West London who were a kind of group of DJs who were very influential. And that evolved into me doing my first record sleeve. Everything went wrong, and you had print problems, and as a freelance designer, you learn the sort of terrible, hard facts about, you might have studied this in college, but you didn't get told about print and the end game of what you do when you do a logo or whatever. And so out of college, as a freelance guy, you make all these mistakes. So every gig, every job went wrong, and I'd be out of my own pocket fixing it. But I got to befriend lots of printers and people actually in the industry. And you realise the journey of creativity, rubbing shoulders and butting up hard against what you're going to do for a living. You know, how do you keep the balance right so that the graphic design is wonderful as a safety net as a musician, because it's much like hairdressing. Everybody needs a logo, everyone needs a haircut, you know. It's just steady Eddie in one respect. And if you can offer people, you know, graphic design jobs here and there, you can bob along, which is what I did for many years, and kept things creative because it was a music industry and what have you. But it's totally different being taught in college how to be a graphic designer to being a graphic designer, especially if you're freelance. And if you are creative, so you're good at that end of it, are you going to be good at sending your invoice, you know, doing your tax? And always you find that the archetype, as I keep, you know, say, archetypes and cliches ring true for a reason, that they are out there.
Yes.
Graphic designers aren't particularly good at invoicing, or, you know, I'm sure you with the legal profession, there would be all sorts of archetypes that ring true.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and it's kind of what you draw on as a branding person. You kind of go, oh, I can sell to this avatar, we call them in the branding world. You know, you make your customer up.
Yeah.
We did it certainly with the brewery. And then you're selling to that person, you're selling to that kind of makeup, and you know there are an amount of them, and they're your market. And it's a bit mechanical, and it's a bit sort of, you're taking all the mystery and the wonder out of the universe by going, we can sell to these people, we can program them. But that's kind of advertising and propaganda. I learned equally about advertising as I did graphic design when I was studying. And it's a real thing. You get back to magic, you get back to the impressionability of people and how you can augment their buying habits by the voodoo of, you know.
Yeah. And magic for me is showing, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but showing people something they haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that in terms of the magic of the creative arts, art or music or graphic design, when you know when you see or you hear magic, it's something you've never seen before.
I think it's you can't describe why you like it.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a newness to it, and there's definitely a hierarchy of, oh, I've seen that. That's commercial, that's stuff. And then, you know, why do we go, David Bowie is singular? You know, what is it about him that's singular? Well, most of it belongs to David Bowie, you know, it's just David Bowie-esque. You could go, oh, he's a bit like this and a bit like that, but it's this, it's a unique artist that comes along.
Yeah, but it's also, it's speaking to us in a really kind of deep and profound way. I think and magic is subjective too, right? So Bowie is loved by there's millions of people, and his music and the kind of
Does he have a conviction? You could say, like, he stuck his neck out, and he was gender fluid before anybody.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah,
you know, in that sphere.
Yeah,
he pulled everybody along with him and went, I'm going this way. And you can't sort of join the dots with all that stuff till it's decades later, and you go, oh my God, he was this singular talent that did X, Y, and Z. And maybe that's the real sort of special. I mean, he feels like fairy-like kind of he was able to mess with preconceived things in a way that he just didn't care, and he was happy to experiment. And other people do it to a far less cross-genre, cross-discipline artistic way. I mean, he really was, you know, incredible. You know, it just took the music on its own, it's an incredible thing. But when you think about all the stylistic, iconic things that he did, you know, we had a beer can designed on his Thunderbolt that won an award. You know? Yeah, and it's like, that's him, come from his brand.
Yeah,
that's a fascinating thing in the same sense as here's a bit of magnetic tape that lasts for 4 minutes, and on that particular bit of magnetic tape, not any other magnetic tape, is that song that's streamed 1 billion times, whatever. The same thing goes for one person's brain has all this incredible ideas and things that were intangible, made tangible, commoditized by, you know, obviously by the music industry and whatever.
Yeah.
But that's branding, you know, that's the magic of branding, and why everybody will drop everything and listen to a David Bowie record over when he was with us. And, you know, Prince, there's certain artists that are multifaceted like that, and it is pure magic. You know, what makes Prince special? What makes anything special? That you can attach that magic name to it, and you can get into the science of magic. Like, magic's a thing.
Yes.
You know, there's the occult, there's mystery schools, there's ancient Egypt, there is Aleister Crowley, there's a whole science around magic with a K, which I've delved into at some length, and I'm not sure I'm any the wiser, to be fair about it, but, you know, you puzzle over what makes X or Y, you know, so incredibly popular. If you think about branding, magic is absolutely at play. And one of the things that magic works with is unseen forces and archetypes. And you go, what are you on about? You know, There's a good example of that you're taught in advertising about Betty Crocker cakes, I think it is. And it was a cake mix that was sold in America. And you just put water in this powder cake mix and you made a cake. They found it wasn't selling. And they were analysing and experimenting with the sales technique of it and the advertising methodology and the way it was working psychologically. And they did a sort of test bed A and B, and they said, just add an egg. And the cake mix with the egg added to it flew off the shelf. And they analysed it and they deconstructed it, and they said it was to do with archetypal things that the predominantly female market were attuning with, which is sacred feminine and eggs and motherhood and caring for your family and why you bake a cake and et cetera, et cetera. And you can scoff at that, or you can look at the metrics around that, and there will be millions of examples of that out in the world of what makes people tick and what makes people buy things. And it's archetypal, it's magical, it's primal, it is mythical, it is mysterious, it is all those things and more. And we are not, mechanical beings. We are, what's FOMO? Like, I want that thing. Buy this thing. All that stuff is magical in its essence. So getting a grip on how that works is very important for branding, and it's very important for naming things and for speaking to people on a primal level. What we did with the brewery with Two Tribes is we knew that an archetype that was always going to be around is drinking beer, dancing around the fire, eating fire-cooked food, being under the stars, being with your friends, community, good music, and being this kind of tribal human again, when we've got a busy technological lives. We aligned with that as a brand, and we were all, we meant it, we were what we said we were. And that worked. And it was, we rock up at a festival, we put a huge amount of effort into creating a good atmosphere with the best DJs, the best sound. I mean, the attention to detail was off the chart because we loved what we were doing. And then it's that sort of if you build it, they will come factor, where if you're pure about that and your alignment is with archetypal human. The other thing that they say a lot in the advertising world is there's only one customer, and that's the human condition. So what do you want? I want connection with my mates. I want to have an experiential thing where I hear something new. It's something I feel invigorated with. I might go tell my friends about it. I feel inclusive. The beer.
So that all that is speaking to our kind of base needs, our primal needs as human beings.
Yeah, we built a beer brand around that.
Yeah.
Two Tribes is selling beers, beautiful beer, very pure beer, great product. But we were music people, and myself and Justin Davidson, who is the founder of the company, we both had record labels. Justin had one a very influential techno label called Pacific. And we were creative people through and through. And we did everything in-house. So we did the can designs. And what happens is we found there was a natural sort of tractor beam of people who were interested in what we were doing because we were pure about what we were doing. We're music lovers, first and foremost. We had a lot of experience putting on events, and we knew that the devil was in the detail with an event. I think we've all been at crappy corporate promo events. People rock up with a, whatever product they're trying to sell. And we did that in a completely different way, where there was a huge amount of love and attention. We curate all the music. We mean it. And that's like, what do you say to the young kid who wants to be a musician? Maybe that's the first, do you mean it?
Do you mean it?
Do you mean it? Because if you don't mean it, why sell anything that you wouldn't buy yourself? That's like rule number one. Like, if I was in the business of selling things I wouldn't buy myself, I'd be a fraud. I don't want to be a fraud. Life's too short to be a fraud. So where I'm at is refining that even further. So it's like, okay, well, I know I'm always going to have this creative urge, but I've got to really really drill down into what does that look like? What kind of music you're making? What kind of brands you want to work with? Now, Justin and I are setting sail with a new, branding company and new ventures, more events, new products to work with. And we know we love vinyl, so we're working in the vinyl space. And we know that we can't ever sell anything we don't believe in. So we're finding things to believe in, and things that feel right. And there's, within that, here and now, it has to be right on quite an ecological grounds and things like that.
Yes.
Which there's a lot of box ticking going on with that, and a lot of falsehood around it. There's, a lot of falsehood out there in general, where I think with social media, the brands who are stupidly thinking they can fake that. You've got sports washing, you've got, you name it.
Yes.
And you go back again, you can't fake the funk. Don't even start if you think you can outwit Joe Public, because Joe Public are not mugs. And it's the other thing that's very important with sales and brand, and this is palpable when you're on the wrong side of this, is you cannot go, buy this thing. Here's this thing, buy it, you need this, let me get this completely correct. So you can't go, I need you to buy this thing. Please please look at this. I want something.
Yeah.
What you have to do is trust that you're doing something that's so pure and you're so excited about and you so believe in, that you tease people with, look at this thing we're doing here, and they gravitate towards you. And the energy of, I want to buy a pair of Nikes because Nike's done their branding job right, and it's all about being an athlete and conquering yourself. And if it's Apple, it's sort of being innovative technically and being together with, slick, smart technology. Whatever it is, the promise that's coming with these brands, you're not going, I better do Apple a favour and I feel sorry for Apple.
Yeah.
It's, I'm missing out if I'm not in on this glow of this magical brand. And there's, brand and magic are inseparable. It's not tangible, is it? What's tangible about what makes Apple great or Nike great? Well, one of the fundamentals is brand promise, which is about consistency. So every touch point is, you've not let me down. So we were very careful with that with Two Tribes. You rock up at the festival, you're not got sloppy. It's like the music's great, the design of the space is great, the food is great, and you're over delivering. And then that brand equity is built up, and the brand equity is what you're selling. It's loyalty. You're going, I want them. There's always choice. They can always choose next door to you. So you better mean it, and you better carefully manage the detail, because this is the other thing with brand, is trust. Okay, so trust is like, the archetypal nature of trust is such that you build it brick by brick. So for 6 years with Two Tribes, we built trust brick by brick. We cared about everything. We did a record label, we did it as a labour of love to help kind of build the brand story, and there were all sorts of activities that, weren't straightforward money-making things, but they were all part of giving love to the core activity that we were doing. And so you build trust. People go, I'm probably going to, if I go to one of their events or I'm going to interface with that company, I'm going to be enriched in some way. That's what we wanted. We wanted to give people value. Oh, look, I found out about this amazing new fire cooking person, or I didn't even know about fire cooking and all these chefs that existed that cooked on open fire, which we did a lot of work with Campfire. And that was pure love and pure. Justin's son was a very talented chef, so it was all a natural fit. We built something that was natural bit by bit, and people wanted to gravitate towards it. But the equity you're building there is built brick by brick. Very easily, which has happened with lots of big brands like cars that have lied about their economy or whatever, it falls off a cliff. And that's a terrible thing. If you don't understand the nature of trust, that it is and then you make a boo-boo or your mask slips if you're not genuine. See you later.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it from the perspective of my former profession, lawyers or coaches or consultants or anyone in the service profession. It's really interesting what you're talking about. You better mean it.
Yeah.
You've got to build it brick by brick.
Yeah.
You have to have a service mentality.
Yeah.
You have to provide value. You almost have to over deliver. These are kind of universal truths, I think, about building a successful business, right? And if you're in the service industry,
the ultimate service industry that I've experienced firsthand is DJing, because really, unless you're that guy with the pyrotechnics going off with thousands of people looking at you, you're in the corner, nobody cares about you, but you're still, when no one's looking, really doing your best.
Yeah,
and
I love that. You're doing your best when no one's looking.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and you care, and it's like three people listening. You're like, I'm going to play this record. I think this is right, you know, and you're. I've no DJ friends that are like that are absolute lifers at it. No matter if they're earning 100 quid or thousands, they're lifers, and part of them knows that they are here to show people good music, new music, good music, the best, rarest, unearth, and they'll spend half their time when they're not DJing finding the music. And it's a craft that is every bit like being dedicated to martial arts or things that are, and if you don't know, you don't know. But the depths of the dedication that can go on is, dimensionally infinite.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. One of the questions I like to ask to kind of round off the conversation is this. So if you can think of somebody that is living that you would love to see being interviewed on this podcast, who would that be? It could be anyone in the world.
I like the idea of learning about people's kind of off-piste spiritual kind of journey. And the people that fascinate me are record producers. So Trevor Horn would be someone who I'd quite like to know kind of what makes him tick outside and around music making.
Okay, so Trevor, if you're watching, come on the podcast. Leo, it's been an amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed having you here.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Cheers, Julian.